Hello and welcome to the Let's Talk Azure podcast with your host Sam Foote.
And Armstrong.
If you're new here, we're a pair of Azure and Microsoft 365 focused IT security professionals.
It's episode 3 of season 6. Sam and I had a recent discussion around cloud security posture management in Defender for Cloud, a reporting tool to identify misconfigurations and best practice recommendations. As Microsoft has enhanced this solution over the years, a recap and update on a previous episode is long overdue.
We've noticed that a large number of you aren't subscribed. If you do enjoy our podcast, please do consider subscribing. It would mean a lot to us for you to show your support to the show.
It's a really great episode, so let's dive in.
Hey Alan, happy nearly the end of January.
Hey Sam, yes. Where's that month gone?
I'm not sure. It's quite long, but also quite short in the same vein, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. It's been manic, to be fair. Lots of things around moving house or not moving house, and let alone, all the work stuff. How have you been?
Yeah, good. Yeah, it's the world's definitely woken up from our holiday break, which is really good. And just good to get back into the swing of things, I think, more than anything. And I don't know. There's just always, so much change, so much to continue learning and and absorbing. So yeah, it's just been a bit of a wild ride. What are we talking about this week?
So I think we're going to continue the Defend for Cloud kind of series, scheme. Well, I don't even know what to call it, but that theme, I guess, is probably the word. Talk about the portfolio of Defend for Cloud. So really, this one's going to be talking about the cloud security posture management side of it.
Yeah, did we do a previous episode on this?
We did in season 4. I don't know what the episode is, but some time ago. And then there was lots to talk about. And really, we just need a recap, I think, about what you actually get that's included. Because, to be fair, there's a lot of stuff that I think haven't really been talked about that are included that you don't necessarily pay more for the resource itself. So I think we kind of caught that or talked about some of that last week. So it's worth, like I said, I think last week I said, we need to recap, understand it all again, try and talk about some of the features in there. I mean, it's almost like another product it is a product in itself, but again, I think it's becoming a beast.
Yeah, it's like a product in a product, isn't it? I assume when we talked about it last, it probably didn't have the split in SKU. It did it?
It did, but it was pretty new, I think, or hadn't been
it?
out for too long. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, should we just, for new listeners, should we just, start off with the basics of, what is cloud security posture management and why is it important?
Yeah, sure. So it's probably worth talking about the main theme that most organizations have or have been doing over the past, let's say, 2 or 3 years. And that's been protecting your devices, being, not say being reactive, but protecting after the fact. So sort of post-breach protection. If someone does get into a server, the EDR then can kick in and, Defender for Endpoint can kick in and stop the attack. Email security, something comes in, is then removed later, that kind of thing. It's been very reactive, I suppose, to, I'm assuming breach. So I need to protect about what happens when I do. How do I, then remediate the issue or shut down that attack? And that's absolutely fine, because you have to have those protections in because you do have to assume breach or when you're going to be breached, that kind of thing. But the other sort of side of it is actually being proactive and reducing your sort of attack surface, reducing your risk. So that's why we use Intune to harden our user endpoints, lock them down so there can't be certain things that can happen, preventing something from even executing. That becomes sort of your posture, your posture, your expose. If we talk, briefly talk about, the exposure management side of things in Defender XDR, that's bringing all that data into one place and showing you what your risks are and where you should maybe prioritize, to harden yourself to reduce the risk of being compromised or having a breach, an attack on an endpoint kind of thing. So sort of security posture management is that part, is seeing your recommendations, understanding where your risks are with your configuration. It could be vulnerabilities on an endpoint. That could be misconfiguration in the cloud, in a cloud environment. It could be recommended configuration to do hardening to reduce a risk, enabling attack surface reduction in Defender for Endpoint as an example. So it's important to have those tools to sort of sanity check your configuration or your environment, to then be able to understand where your risks are, where you need to prioritize updating configuration or improving that security element, or where you can't make those changes because of software. Example is like old legacy software that you still need to keep to run an application. It's got loads of vulnerabilities in it. That's obviously a weak point per se. It's more around what mitigation you got in place, what extra monitoring you might have on that sort of area. So at least then, if something does happen, you see it. So that's the kind of, I suppose, high level sort of what posture management is. And in effect, there's various tooling, like I said, that can do that. And one key area is around cloud security posture management. So how is your cloud environment, and this is more around infrastructure, sort of cloud environment. So an example being Azure, AWS, GCP environments, and understanding how they are configured to best practice of even based on the provider's best practice recommendations on how to secure it versus what other standards there might be out there on how you should configure a Kubernetes cluster, a virtual machine, RBAC in those environments.
Yeah, and I think I just want to add one bit to that is as well as where in your ecosystem and how close to the edge of your ecosystem are these resources, right? So, your user endpoints, well, traditionally would have been like on site, wouldn't it? You might have had desktops which were in your offices that never roamed or anything like that. Then we had endpoints that left the organization and had to adopt zero trust to make sure that they were as well protected as possible. In cloud resources, a lot of them are, let's say, publicly accessible or close to the public edge. For a lot of a lot of resources aren't. There's their private, just workloads running, in a different data center effectively. And I think that's why it's so critical, and it's become such a, do we call it like a discipline or an area of focus of security posture management? The cloud is just so hyper connected. It's relatively easy to expose. So, these types of tools are only going to become more important. They are already important, but it's not going to shift away unless those workloads shift away from the cloud.
Yeah, and this is more of a, you can build from, secure from start. Someone can configure something or design something to be secure, but maybe the implementation missed a step, maybe, and things like that. This is more around understanding it's all about understanding and your environment and getting visibility of it from a security lens. In that, you might have loads of stuff in Azure, built by infrastructure as code, with all the the will in the world, it's built to be secure. But environments change, tweaks are done, the services change as well to maybe add additional features that maybe you shouldn't have turned on, or they're deprecated, they're recommended other recommendations come in. So this is just giving you that visibility. I suppose you could kind of say it could be removing a blind spot that from your view of how it's been configured. I mean, I've been on, previously I've had a couple of engagements where, you didn't know what was in the cloud environment. Generally, you knew they had a lot of, developer teams, building, application services, etc. But the security team have no visibility of how it's been configured, or if there's any weak points, kind of thing. So being able to just visualize that, understand from a score, from whichever way you want to look at it, how many recommendations there are, what critical ones there are, maybe, or even just understanding what assets you have in a list. That's going to be valuable to yourself in case of there's a 0-day for a Kubernetes cluster or something. I don't know. I'm trying to think of something, but just trying to understand where that where you may have an issue, or where you may need to harden that environment. Just like I said, just having that visibility is key.
Yeah, exactly. So, Alan, what does how does Defender for Cloud CSPM help with visibility?
Okay, so Defender for Cloud, which is Defender for CSPM, is part of the Defender for Cloud portfolio. And
Well done.
we kind of said last week that we call Defender for Cloud a portfolio of products because it is, it could be split into 3 sort of areas, but generally it's there's loads of different products within that. And I think we even tried to do a Defender for Cloud like overview, and it's like scratching the surface of it. So Defender or CSPM, Defender CSPM is kind of split into two areas within the product. One part is called foundational CSPM, and that is in effect free. So I suppose you could say, yeah, it's free. You're able to use it. It doesn't cost you anything on top of any of your other Azure spend or AWS or GCP spend. So kind of alluded to it already, but Defender CSPM or foundational CSPM is available for Azure, AWS, and GCP. So not just the Azure. So you can gain that visibility into those other clouds, and you don't necessarily have to understand how those environments work. If you've been using Azure and then you've acquired an organization with AWS or GCP, as long as you create those connections, you can then get the understanding of what resources are in there. So yeah, split into 2. Defender CSPM is a paid subscription, and we'll talk about how much that costs, etc. Later on. But straight out the box, for free, there's quite a lot that you can get. So I'm going to run through. I'm going to say quickly, but very high level what you get in foundational CSPM. And as I said, everything I mentioned now is also in Defender CSPM. So you get security recommendations, asset inventory, secure score, data visualization and reporting with Azure Workbooks. So being able to visualize that data the way you want to see it. Exporting the data, the recommendations and things like that out to something else. Maybe you want to put it into log analytics, or you want to export it into something like, and then be able to do a Power BI report on it, things like that. Workflow automation, to be able to alert on a new recommendation or work out which team needs to be notified about a recommendation, that kind of thing. Tools for remediation. That seems very sort of high level, but in effect there are some quick wins there, quick fixes that allows you to remediate some of the recommendations straight out of the box. And then you get Defender Cloud Security Posture Management. In effect, that is a benchmark that Microsoft has that is based on CIS, NIST, and PCSI. The sort of what they call the technical controls that you're able to actually make changes to the resources to meet those requirements. So not necessarily the people and process part of it. So that's what you get from foundational CSPM, which is in effect a lot of reporting kind of side of things and getting the baseline sort of recommendation. So yeah, for free, you can see that. And that is all all those three environments. So for Defender CSPM, you then get some more enhanced reporting and other stuff. So let's go through some of those. And again, I will probably run through this because quite a few here. Maybe we'll pick some later to maybe dive into. So we've got to say it. AI security posture management. So that's quite a new one that's sort of come in. Agentless vulnerability, VM vulnerability scanning, agentless VM secret scanning, attack path analysis, risk prioritization, risky hunting with the Security Explorer, code to cloud mapping for containers, code to cloud mapping for infrastructure as code, pull requests annotations, internet exposed analysis, exposure attack surface management, permissions management, regulatory compliance assessments. I mean, I'm 2/3 of the way through this list, and there's already quite a lot there. I don't know what you think, Sam. There's tons there already.
Yeah, finish. Go through the list in its entirety. Let's pull out, and then we'll pull out some bits.
Yes.
I just think the more you speak, the more ridiculous it sounds. Not what not you.
Well, I had to take a breath.
Just the list.
I had to take a breath. Really, that's what I was getting at. That's why I
take a sip of water and continue. Yeah.
Yes. So I think I said regulatory compliance assessments, ServiceNow integration, critical asset protection, governance to drive remediation at scale, data security posture management, sensitive data scanning, agentless discovery for Kubernetes, custom remediations, agentless code to cloud container vulnerability management, API security posture management, and Azure Kubernetes service security dashboard. And that is it for now.
Okay, so I think the first thing I want to just discuss with you after you've just gone through both of those lists is why do they release so much in the foundational with no cost, do you think? Is it a tease to upsell you to the Defender portion? Because it's not like... Are there any other examples of this where Microsoft will give you a completely free tier of something before you upgrade?
I guess in Azure, generally, there are some free tiers, aren't there, we've seen? Or very low-cost tiers of stuff. But I think it's because it's important to understand your environment. They don't want, I suppose they want to help customers be as secure as they can. And this stuff is probably what's, all this information is kind of already there, if that makes sense. It's just visualizing it or bringing it to your attention, basically, I feel. And you could say that as well. They want to be able to show some, not to say responsibility, but showing that they're caring about the security side of things and giving you some of that tooling to make you secure on their on their platform. I mean, quite a lot of the foundational stuff was probably originally part of the Defender of Cloud, Azure, whatever it used to be called, Azure Security Center,
yeah,
wasn't it?
Yeah, Security Center. Yep.
Yeah, so it used to be part of that kind of functionality, and that was included, from the day dot kind of thing. So I think they're just making sure they keep that same sort of functionality there and then enhancing it. I mean,
sorry, go on.
I mean, I didn't even talk about where some of these functionality is available. I mean, we'd be here for another couple of minutes, but not all of them are available on all platforms. That's fair to say. Most of them are AWS, Azure, GCP. There are some just Azure ones only, as their preview, some of them. So they will sort of venture out into the other place as well. But some of those foundational ones, they are Azure, AWS, GCP, on premise when you've got Azure Arc enabled, Docker Hub, JFrog, Artifactory, and no, I think that's it. Yeah. So they're including other, guessing JFrog and that, and Docker Hub is like container locations or container image locations. Is that fair to say? Probably out of my depth here, but
you just made the exact point that I was just about to make, because not only is something like Secure Score and the Microsoft Cloud Security Benchmark zero cost, it is also supported in external cloud services, right? Platforms. So, the Microsoft Cloud Security Benchmark is supported in Azure, AWS, and GCP. So it doesn't matter if you've got a split cloud workload and you've got some stuff in AWS. Microsoft wants you to connect to it. They want to scan the posture of it with their own benchmark, and they'll let you do it for free. So it's I don't know. That's just the part of me that's just, this is why Defender CSPM is kind of at least foundational, and we do say this to a lot of people. It is literally a no-brainer, because the time it takes to onboard it is very, very quick, and the value that you get out of it for literally no cost. I mean, there's not as much value as the Defender CSPM, but from an inventory management perspective and security recommendations, I suppose it does align with the free Secure Score, doesn't it? I suppose.
Yeah.
Because really what you are getting here is Secure Score and inventory for cloud in a very basic way.
At the same time, Secure Score is really Microsoft technology based.
No, that is true. Yeah,
excluding the integrations with Defender for Cloud apps and the SaaS security posture management, where that brings in some of the other stuff. But then that is kind of similar to this, I guess. That posture management is just enhancing it to third parties for the included cost of Defender for Cloud apps.
Yes, and the included cost is a good point, because I was just thinking when I said it's free, you do actually have to pay for the resources in order to benchmark them, right? So
yeah, and I
assume you're paying for it somewhere.
I called that out. I think that there's no additional cost for it apart from the resources that you've got in those workloads, in those platforms. So,
but then it does give you recommendations on free resources, doesn't it? Like resource groups, as an example. You don't pay anything for those.
RBAC stuff as well. Yeah, it's not a. You could claim it's. Well, you could have Azure on and have free stuff and not have a paid Entra.
Do you get super identities in foundational, or is that
no?
Okay, fine. Okay,
No,
So it's not.
that's under the permissions management part. So you'll get
Yes.
some recommendations on RBAC, or like, someone doesn't have MFA, that kind of stuff. I guess not say the basic stuff, but the default stuff, but not over permissioning side of things.
Yeah, sorry, I hadn't scrolled down the list far enough to see permissions management, so I apologise for
Yes.
that. What are there any standout features that you want to
So
take us
so
through?
it's probably worth talking about, including the foundational, and we kind of maybe talked about it last week a little bit, but initially you wasn't able to see some resources. Like, you'd see API manager, but you wouldn't necessarily see each of your APIs, as an example. With foundational and Defender CSPM, I think it's both of those. You in effect can get your inventory for most things now. It's been included in the pricing for it. Previously, I think you might have had to have the full cloud protective workload to even be able to inventory the resources and then get all the extra benefits from it. That's been included. Things like, because there was once for DevOps security, Defender for DevOps, I think it was originally when it was in preview, that was going to be a protective workload. That is included now in Defender CSPM to be able to check your code, code to cloud sort of capability. Recently there's the artificial intelligence security posture management. It's interesting, it was twice in here. But be able to see that now, because OpenAI and the other models in the various clouds now, be able to understand how they've been configured to try and reduce the risk of them, seeing the attack path on those, understanding how someone could use that to then gain access to data or something like that. I think, that's very powerful in today's world, where AI is key, or is the driver of everything.
Yeah, I kind of see that Defender CSPM is like a kind of a catch-all like workload, if we want to call it that, right? So you obviously had the static sort of posture management, but kind of feels like that wasn't sort of valuable enough to enable it in some respects, right? Because you do have other tools, don't you, that you can run against your cloud infrastructure. There's lots of even open source tools that can help you with CSPM, right? But what I think they've done is they've introduced the sort of DevOps process, haven't they? And the deployment process, the software development process into it as well. Because I bet you that's a big chunk of users of Azure is custom app development, AI development, workload, etc. And then they've just expanded that tooling out because those development teams aren't just using Azure; they're using other like tools and processes and Docker Hub, etc. So they have to reach out into all these other places so that they can get true end-to-end protection for teams.
And one of the things is trying to understand, like, the vulnerabilities on an operating system or container. Previously you might have to have a scanning tool, Tenable, Qualys, etc., or Defender for Endpoint, onboarded on that machine. Not that you wouldn't not put an AV on it, but they may be so small, all the containers kind of thing. They've brought out the agentless vulnerability scanning, where in effect it's taking a snapshot of the disk and then scanning it offline to look for vulnerabilities for the software and everything. So you're not impacting those workloads having a scan or a vulnerability assessment done against them. Not that they tend to be very aggressive again, in today's world for AV, EDR, and vulnerability management, but it's just taken out of the picture. It's that kind of stuff. And same thing with containers and things like that, and images. yes, some services can do that, but this is just doing it in the background for you and understanding what possibilities there are for the from the vulnerabilities in that image. Maybe it's based on I think you said previously, there's like sometimes you have a base image that you've used, and then you've added your build add software on top of it. You need to understand what your risks are.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the big one I'm really loving at the moment is attack path analysis. To
Oh
be
yeah,
totally honest with you, and and it's kind of linked in with external attack surface management because and internet exposure analysis because it's what I find is it's not easy to quantify single resources in Azure or any cloud service because they're all interconnected and dependent on each other. It's very rare that you would like have like a one single IaaS VM that's exposed to the
doing
internet
everything.
running a web server. Like in modern application development, that just doesn't really happen that often, right? So being able to look at the posture um, resources and how they are connected and the information that they share between each other, because identities are really complicated. They're not really complicated. They can become complicated in Azure because you could create an identity and you can share it amongst lots of resources, right? And then you don't really think about the posture of resource X, which shares an identity with resource Y, but resource Y is publicly accessible to the internet and it has a posture management issue. Like, let's say it's, I don't know, RDP is unauthenticated and open to the internet, as an example, right? I just using stupid random, examples, but being able to see that path mapped out and kind of automatically for you as well. But you can run your own queries to drill through that graph yourself, and you can find out a lot of really good information from your environment through that. You've got to take it with a pinch of salt because I have seen a lot of, I'll call it false positives with attack path analysis, and especially the criticality of and the severity of some of the recommendations that it gives is questionable sometimes. But as an automated tool, always running, always watching, and being able to alert you to notifications for changes in your environment, that is pretty powerful to me, because it's running 24/7.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think your the attack paths, and like you said, there are some questionable attack paths, but I think, or from what I've seen, it's more around the internet exposed device having vulnerabilities on it itself, having a critical one on there, and in effect it's saying, well, if that could be compromised, then they're in, and they've got access to all these resources, kind of thing as well.
Yeah.
I've seen that where it's more been around the vulnerabilities rather than I suppose the configuration of it or the identities being used as well.
Yeah, but we've got lots of ways. My always go to example is internet exposed Azure blob storage containers.
Mm.
It's like it's almost trivial how simple it is. Actually, it's different now. The experience in Azure is different. It's a lot harder to make them publicly accessible now. But I've seen countless examples of somebody creating a public storage container to share something with somebody else and then not cleaning up afterwards, right? So, this attack path analysis is constantly watching. You might have Azure policy in place to block that type of activity, but is your coverage 100%? Will it be 100% in 3 months' time? Just having the safety net of something watching and saying, hey, I think you've got a storage container here. And it's potentially got sensitive data in it. Oh, and by the way, it's publicly accessible. Are you okay with that? Right? Like just having that, and even if it is, and I know I spoke critically of the alerts and some of the recommendations, but I would prefer to be cleaning up a false positive than to not have that insight at all, because I wouldn't say it's that noisy. It just takes some management to keep an eye on it.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, we've talked about 2, maybe 3 of those 15, 20 things on that list. It's definitely worth checking what's available and what the benefits are, and where the resources or what workloads are available for, it's available on. I mean, like I said, most of them are the 3 main ones plus these new Docker Hub and JFrog.
Yeah, I think the foundational CSPM is like a no-brainer for like everybody, because it's got good value there. If you need regulatory compliance, if you're publicly exposing things to the internet, if you've got a development team building into Azure, then, or you're using any type of containerization, Defender CSPM is likely to be valuable for any of those individual workloads by themselves, I would say.
Yeah.
Should we move on to pricing, Alan? Because I think there's some nuance there. Well, not nuance, it's quite simple, but I suppose there's some things to think about.
Yeah. So, as we've said, foundational CSPM is free, included in the resources current spend in whichever cloud environment it's in. So you don't pay anything on top of what you're paying already for the resources available.
Well, then, from that perspective, sorry to butt in, but it is free, isn't it? Because
It is.
it covers AWS resources, and Microsoft don't get any of that money, do they? Right? Sorry,
No.
I've taken back my statement. It is free.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, it's free. You don't have to pay anything. So for the Defender CSPM, it is done at a subscription level enablement. So, or account or workspace, I think it is in GCP. So it's done at the sort of the subscription level side of things. So anything in that subscription then is depending on the resource, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, is then billed for it. So the cost of CSPM is $5.11 per billable resource per month. So the $1,000 million question is, what is a billable resource? So, as I said, a lot of the workloads aren't included in or being classed as a billable resource. So, the main areas are compute, storage, and databases. So, anything in Azure, AWS, GCP that is a virtual machine, scale set, or EC2 instance, or Google Compute instance, or Google Compute or Google Instance Group, is classes as a billable resource. But if they are deallocated or turned off, not running, then they don't get billed. So it's only billed when they're turned on, which is what we see on some of the other workloads. So it's not just a count of VMs; it's only if they're turned on. Storage accounts. So generally, actually, as it says, storage accounts, but there's an exclusion on storage accounts without blob containers or file shares. So if you're using tables or queues, I think it's the other one that they can be used for, then they won't be chargeable against CSPM. But you might get some recommendations around them. Databases, that is SQL Server, Postgres, or MySQL, SQL instances, MariaDB. I probably absolutely destroyed that. And Synapses are classed
I'm not going to correct you. It's better if I don't.
Oh, okay. Well, 'cause it's completely out, yeah?
No. I just continue on.
Okay. Yeah, so that's the ones in Azure. AWS is S3 buckets and RDS instances. There is no exclusions for those. If they're there, they're being included. Storage buckets in GCP. there are some exclusions. But other regions then, Europe West 1, US East 1, US West 2, and US Central. If they're outside of those, and there's a few others in there, then it's not included. And Cloud SQL instances are included. So those are the resources there. What you can do to understand how many resources you have that may be billable, in Defender for Cloud, there is in the workbook section, there is a cost estimation workbook, and it will show you how much CSPM will cost you in each subscription or overall, and including AWS. I think GCP is coming from it. I don't think GCP is in there at the moment. So at least you can see straight off that if all machines were turned off, all those resources were turned off, this is how much it would cost you per month.
So, are there any like real resources that aren't billable?
Well, containers, images, instances, the Docker Hub images, the APIs or OpenAI or AI security. They're not included. They're not a billable resource.
So if
Key
you enable,
vaults.
yeah, okay. So if you've got, let's use a really basic example. Let's use a key vault. I got a subscription with a single resource group and a single resource of a key vault in it. If I enable Defender CSPM, do I have to pay
You'll
for
have
that?
it, yeah. As far as I'm aware, there's it's only based on the billable resources. I think some of the examples where if you had, 3 servers, and then you had 100 APIs, an API manager or API managers, you don't pay per API or API manager. That's all included. DevOps, doesn't matter how many, as far as I'm aware, how many DevOps instances or repos that it's scanning or pipelines that you've included. It's all included.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay. So actually, okay, I've just looked up the table actually. Wow, it's quite a limited set, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
things like app service isn't included, right?
No, but you get recommendations on it, and some good ones at that as well.
But you can get, yeah, but because one of the paid features of Defender CSPM is like prioritized, recommendations, right?
Yeah.
So if you had a subscription that's just got, but I suppose they are banking on the fact that, like an app service is likely to, yeah, but an app service might back off to Cosmos, I suppose, won't it?
Yeah, but don't forget though, this is the posture management side of things. There is also the cloud protective workload for app service where you maybe get more insights just on that one, and you'll get activity alerts and incidents and things like that. So there's value in having the individual cloud protective workloads that you can have.
Yeah, and I
but
completely
from a posture management sort of good standpoint, all the code going up to your app service, making sure at least that's the best it can be, is probably not a bad thing for Defender CSPM.
And I think that probably highlights why it might not be so scary, because you set it at the subscription level, right? Because you then think, oh, everything in my subscription is then included. I can't break it down any further, right? But you might have it's probably a good call out for correct organization of Azure, right?
Landing zones, things
landing
like that,
zones, segregation, so because if you do have things correctly segregated, you can sort of decide, well, you can limit your exposure to things being included. I can imagine for the cost, especially when you're saying like a virtual machine, like a production level virtual machine's not $5 a month, is it? So of your relative spend on those virtual machines, Defender for Cloud posture management might be a low cost. I know it's adding cost, but I mean relative to the actual resource itself.
Yeah,
Right?
and I think there used to be, there probably still is, that if you do have one of the other cloud protective workloads, there are some, I'm going to say, discounts, because some of the other workloads enhance, they may partly include some of it. So there is not say a cost reduction, but you're not paying twice for some of it, some of the functionality. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, no, definitely, I agree.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So
Okay.
it's definitely worth getting foundational CSPM in place and getting your other cloud environments hooked up to understand what it looks like. And then you can make the decision about moving to the full CSPM sort of functionality and seeing all the, I'm going to say, cool stuff that comes out of it. We may not want to know it, but
or
you need to know it.
What's your license period? How long do you even need to run your Defender CSPM for? Sorry, being nefarious there, but
Yeah,
you're only billed every 30 days, aren't you?
Yeah, I think you build. Well, if machines are turned off, you don't get billed, so it's probably per hour.
Yeah,
I guess, or per day, maybe is the worst. So you've got that, but you do have to consider that recommendations change, new resources are built.
Oh no, 100%, 100%.
So
100%.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to try it out, see what you
100%.
benefit from it, then yeah,
Try it
and
out.
you will. You do. If you've never enabled it at all on a subscription, then you do get 30 days a trial, as far as I'm aware, for it. So you can then at least see what you get and then realize that you want to keep going with it. Hopefully.
No, that is good. That it is that approachable, right? So you've got two different levels that you can start with, and you've also got that flexibility of the trial as well. That you can't get, and it's billed monthly, and actually not just monthly, because there is this, if computers actually, there's exclusions for deallocated VMs as an example, right? So
yeah, and you can, for Defender for Cloud, there is a reservation you can have, so you can pay up front.
Defender for Cloud benefit,
yeah, pay up front and get a discount if you're burning, but you're consuming enough cost there to reduce the cost. So there are ways to assist in the cost of it.
Okay, cool. Thanks for that, Alan. I feel like we covered a lot, but not a lot at the same time. It's mental.
Yeah, it's almost like when we used to say, we'll do Defender Cloud, but then we'll do individual workloads. We're almost done CSPM and a few of its functionality. You're not even dived into it. I mean, I think you've done one on DevOps security previously, so you've kind of covered a little bit of it, or one section of it, but that was a whole episode. So attack paths and a few others probably doing its own episode.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. Yeah.
Cool. So what's the next episode? I think it's the news, isn't it?
Yeah, it will be January news at the start of February.
Cool. Yeah, I haven't checked actually, see if anything news come out. I've heard of some previous stuff that I can't talk about, but
yeah, I'm waiting for my Chaos Studio and my Azure data. Was it Databox?
Databox, yeah.
I'm just looking for those updates. I'm just going to skip over everything else. Oh, you've done a load of updates to Azure SQL. Nah, don't fancy it. I need a new, I need a new submarine version of Azure Databox. Thank you.
Cool. Okay, so did you enjoy this episode? If so, please do consider leaving us a review on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. This really helps us reach out to more people like yourself. If you have any specific feedback or suggestions, we have a link in our show notes to get in contact with us.
Yeah, and if you've made it this far, thanks ever so much for listening. We'll catch you on the next one.
Yep, thanks all.